Time for you to learn what you can do.
I'm just ordinary.
No, you're not. You were born to protect us.
From what?
We call them hollows. For centuries, they've hunted us for our powers.
I assure you, we are coming.
There's a new world coming.
A boy named Jake finds his way to a home of children with unique abilities, run by a woman named Miss Peregrine, who cares for the children and protects them from other uniquely gifted people who seek to do them harm.
The good.
What did most of the work in selling this movie to me was the premise. Having these kids with unique powers begets a lot of very amusing situations throughout the course of the movie. And these situations arise based on the antagonizing forces. The villains in this movie are very creepy and have very dastardly motivations. It's these villains, the themes, some of the character elements, and some of the story elements, as well as some visual content, that pushes this film into PG-13 territory. However, there's no cursing in this movie, so if you want to take your 9 or 10-year-old to this movie, view it as a strong PG before you make your decision.
The iffy.
Much of this movie's plot is facilitated by jumping through time. And when the events of this movie cause even the characters to start raising questions about the consequences of these time jumps, then the story can start to get a little bit messy. That being said, I found it pretty easy to just kind of go with some of these elements. Part of the backstory of the uniquely gifted people are that ordinary people found it hard to coexist with them, so they had to isolate themselves, namely for the safety of the children. I felt like there was a little more meat to the characters in that plot thread, and I wish this movie had more of it, though I can understand that for the sake of this story, there probably wasn't time for it. Most of the peculiar children in this movie are well defined enough that you understand each of their powers and personality. All of these characters do get a moment or two in the spotlight, and the performances that they give are fine. They could have been a bit better, though. The villains of this movie have positive and negative qualities. On the one hand, they have a real great sense of creepiness, and the idea behind their motivation is honestly pretty disturbing, and probably one of the reasons this movie got a PG-13 rating. However, around the climax of the movie, these villains start to get a lot of really silly moments, especially the one played by Samuel L. Jackson. I will admit, some of these moments and lines are very entertaining, especially with the way they're delivered by Sam Jackson. But I think the fact that there is silliness to this degree is a stark contrast to the villains that were established very early on in the movie. When you establish sick-minded villains who make the tone disturbing and the stakes higher, it really hurts the movie when they start acting silly.
The bad.
There are two problems I have with the climax. The first one is that it uses up its highest note very early on in the climax, and from there the rest of it just kind of drags. The second problem is how the climax makes use of the main character. Some of the solutions employed to fight the antagonists are common sense type solutions. Solutions that I believe could have been conceived without the main character. That being said, the main character also has a peculiarity, and this peculiarity made fighting the antagonists a lot easier. So there is that.
The verdict?
If we're talking Tim Burton stereotypes, this is probably one of the most atypical kind of things that he would work on, and I think it's a good thing that he made a movie like this. It's got a really cool premise, and it's got a lot of cool concepts going into making the story happen. All in all, I had a pretty decent amount of fun watching this movie. This is Detective Steve, and you know what? I actually want to read the book this was based on.